بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's On Disciplining the Soul, Kitab Riyadat al-Nafs. We're still reading the introduction written by the translator T.J. Winter, Abdul Hakim Murad. An excellent introduction. This is why we are taking our time reading it. The very last thing that we have read, a statement by Sahl Tustari. This is bottom of page 43, and it's about marriage. He said, in the midst of his feats of fasting, he saw no reason why he should treat marriage in the same way as food. An ignorant bachelor, he taught in one of his famous economic utterances, is a devil. A married ignoramus is a beast, behemoth. A learned bachelor is God's slave. Why a learned married man is an angel. And this is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One needs to fulfill two things to combine knowledge and marriage. The angelic condition of the man of God then is not only not impeded by marriage, but actually depends upon it. We continue. What many early Sufis did disparage, however, was the kind of amorous passion, ishq, which distracts a man from the contemplation and love of God. There is not much support for a condemnation of ishq in the hadith literature. Although a frequently cited report does have the Prophet say, whoever loves, ashiq, is chaste, conceals his passion, and dies a martyr. The ishq, we talk about a state of the heart overwhelmed by al-ma'shuq, though it could be maybe it is used here not as love. This ishq is really a particular person, and the distraction comes from being obsessed. This is when we talk about the human. So whoever loves is ashiq, is chaste, conceals his passion, and dies a martyr. من عشق فعف فمات فهو شهيد. And the other text of the matan of the hadith, which corresponds to the English translation here, من عشق وكتم وعف والصبر غفر الله له وادخله الجنة. Now it's probably like a combination of both. Well, this is hadith, a forged tradition. Some said that it is simply has weakness in the chain of narrators, but some scholars said that it is forged. But if we ask the question, is one rewarded? Inshallah, yes. Meaning that you love someone and you just simply the adab prevents you from expressing anything wrong, and you just simply hide it. So the adab, so you remain chaste. And it seems more likely that the condemnation of ishq, which had become common by Ghazali's times, originated in the Greek heritage, where the attitude to eros. Now this is, of course, it's the physical component, I would say, the reference here. So where the attitude to eros had been rather supercilious. In an anthology of philosophical adages, the Arabs could read the verdicts of Plato, Aristotle, and Galen, and others about love, discovering, for instance, that Diogenes regarded ishq as the disease of an empty, careless heart. Following this tradition, Al-Kindi and Ibn Sina had Some hard words to say about profane love. While the Platonizing freethinker Muhammad ibn Zakaria al-Razi thought that it had been uncommon among the Greek philosophers simply because they had occupied themselves with more worthy activities such as study. The Christian philosopher Yahya bin Adi defines ishq as among the reprehensible traits, being an extravagant excess of love. Love is hub. If ishq is really a reflection of eros, then it's really the physical uh, intimacy, sexuality, of course. Ghazali takes up this theme, defining it as utter ignorance of the intended purpose of sexual congress, and he is followed in this by a number of later writers, including Ibn Jawzi, whose work, The Condemnation of Passion, is perhaps the most impressive defense of this attitude. The argument was that ishq is not only a waste of time and an extravagant misuse of the sexual faculty, but also leads men and women into sins such as adultery or worse. And you can see that sexuality is today an integral part of the world of art. The singers performing sexuality is, I mean, they might call it dance, they might call it background to it's sexuality, and sometimes they engage in sexuality on during plays on theater. And from what one reads, it's sometimes the full act just simply before the audience and the cinema and the sexuality and violence. But here we talk about sexuality. So the argument was that ishq is not only a waste of time and an extravagant misuse of the sexual faculty, but also leads men and women into sins such as adultery or worse. All these soap operas from Latin America in Spanish, from Turkish soap operas. Ultimately, it's sexuality is part of it. It's uh, it's not really it's not true love. It centers around eros. While the pious Muslim may and should love his spouse, this must never be allowed to turn into an obsession. At all times, he is not, or he is to be the master of his passions. Control. One might express this ishq versus love, if you will. The An example, there was in Jerusalem uh, someone who wanted to marry a woman, and her family did not accept him, and he literally killed himself in front of her house. Well, it's very simple. They they he was not the first one to be rejected by a family, and maybe for a good reason. Maybe for a good reason. So it's this kind of ishq, thinking that it cannot be except this person. No, and many couples are disappointed after marriage. This is why we have, even I don't know, maybe there's a need for uh, a serious sociological study why we have the rate of divorce around 50%. amongst newlywed couples. Following this tradition, Ghazali believes that although the sex drive is not to be classed with other appetites as inherently bestial and demeaning, nevertheless, the desire for woman is susceptible to excess, defect, and equilibrium. An excess in the matter of sexual desire then causes the intellect to be overcome, which is very much to be condemned. Insufficient sexual desire, however, leads to an indifference to women or to giving them insufficient pleasure. They have a right as spouses, which is also to be condemned. Sexual desire is a praiseworthy thing when it stands in a state of equilibrium, obedient to the intellect and the law in all its movements. So it's a call for mm, the middle path, if you will, the wasatiyya, the moderation. Here again, we are in the presence of classical Islam's tendency to moderation, of which Ghazali is among the most convincing theorists. From his treatment, it is clear that although extravagances abound in the hagiographies, the biographies of the saints, these serve finally to show the reader the benefit of the golden mean, which in this sphere of human experience, as elsewhere, was identified with the way of the Prophet ﷺ, the golden mean. Details of extreme abstinence or of lawful indulgence, whether concerning food or sex, are deployed to shock the reader out of this or out of his complacencies. They aim to create an effect, an atmosphere, not establish a rule of life. It is one of Ghazali's virtues that he makes explicit the contingent nature of the hyperbolic and extravagant exemplar of which the Sufis were so fond, where in other pious writings this had been obscured, albeit for the best of reasons. The and in this paragraph, the associating, of course, and it is the Prophet ﷺ, his way, his path, his sunnah, is the golden mean, is the when three companions went uh, to the families of the Prophet ﷺ, and they asked about his worship, and the hadith says as if basically كأنهم استقلوها as if they thought that it is very little. This is about the worship of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one of them pledged to fast throughout his life. One of them pledged to pray every night throughout the night for the rest of his life, and one of them pledged not to get married, to remain celibate as a form of worship. And the Prophet ﷺ was angry. He was angry with them. He was angry with this excess. It's an extreme position, and he showed that this is not his sunnah. He said that regarding fasting, he does fast and he does break his fast, meaning that other than Ramadan, he did not fast every single day throughout his life. Number two, regarding prayer at night, Qiyam al-Layl, he said that he does pray and he does uh, sleep also. Number three, regarding marriage, regarding a woman, he said that he may that his sunnah is to get married, so they should not basically pledge to make these three pledges. And already Abdul Hakim Murad said in the at one point the hadith of Prophet ﷺ that in this dunya, in this world, he loved perfume, he loved women, marriage, of course, but he found his purpose. He loved وجعلت قرة عيني في الصلاة. That's really the prayer was his. This is the fulfillment. This is the where his heart was, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So perfume. We talk about a good smell, and that which is natural, fulfilled within the realm of marriage. But ultimately, it's the prayer. The influence of philosophical ethics, and that's a subtitle number 7. As we have seen, the early Muslims soon came into productive contact with Oriental Christianity, whose severe and world-denying tendencies were at first influential, but were later attenuated following the advent of a more balanced and mature spirituality. More significant in the long term, however, was the Greek philosophical legacy, which was both older and more intellectually developed. For 1,000 years, Greek learning had been pursued in schools in Syria and Egypt. And although by the time of the Arab conquest, it had become somewhat reiterative and degraded, it was only a matter of time before Muslims took note of it and attempted to reconcile it with Islam. Rather, as men like Philo and John Philoponus had tried to reconcile Greek thought as they understood it with Judaism and Christianity. As a context, talking about Syria and Egypt, the Library of Alexandria, we talk about Greek, originally we talk about the Greek heritage. The Mediterranean became like a Greek lake with Greek presence on the shores of the Mediterranean, to the north, to the south, and to the west. So Asia Minor, which is today's Turkey, Greece itself, of course, they went to Italy, and hence the name Greek. The Hellenistic tradition, if you will, all the way to the eastern shores of Spain, northern shores of Africa. They continue to, in Libya itself, they say about the people of Darna, east of Benghazi, east of Baida, which was like the capital of King Idris Sanusi. They say about the people of Darna that they are Greek. They say Greek, and that they are not Greek today, but they are descendants of the Greek of yesterday. So eastern, of course, shores of the Mediterranean. So in fact, the birth of Christianity was really within that Greek milieu. And here it talks about both Jews and Christians try to reconcile Greek philosophy with Judaism and Christianity, particularly Neoplatonism, though you will find Aristotelian um, Christian theologians, for example. Aquinas was Aristotelian, while Augustine was Neoplatonic. Directly or otherwise, this enterprise generated many of the great sectarian controversies of Muslim history. Not only were there wide divergences in the interpretation of the Hellenic legacy, there were many men who believed that a pagan tradition alien to Islam, it had nothing to offer the community of believers. There was no shortage of religious scholars schooled in the traditional disciplines of Hadith and Quranic learning to pronounce anathemas against those who drank from such polluted springs intellectually. But the Muslim philosophers defended themselves vigorously, believing in the words of the Basran thinker Al-Kindi. He died in the year 256, that is 870 of the Common Era. He said that we should not be ashamed to acknowledge truth and to assimilate it from whatever source it came to us, even if it is brought to us by former generations of foreign peoples. For him who seeks the truth, there is nothing of higher value than truth itself. It never cheapens or abases him who searches for it, but ennobles and honors him. Uh, of course, Imam Al-Ghazali stood against Greek metaphysics. He had no problem, of course, with logic. He had no problem with the sciences like and math. For him, the problem was metaphysics. The discussion, the dispute between the Mu'tazilite sect, which made use of basically Aristotelian methods of reasoning, and the traditionalists, led by such men as Ahmad bin Hanbal, eventually gave birth to compromise positions such as that of Al-Ash'ari, whose followers developed a theology which, while making use of Greek reasoning, contrived to exclude philosophy from subjects such as the resurrection and judgment, which it held could be known only through the Islamic scriptures revelation. More on the Greek translation and heritage, inshallah, we will deal with in the next session, and the translation movement and Al-Ma'mun and the impact of Greek philosophy and probably Imam Ghazali's Tahafut, all in the next session, inshallah. Until then, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.